Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us at our weekly class of The Pet is Mightier Than the Sword. This class has gone through many different things. It was originally Java for the Soul, for those that remember that one. And it's still under the auspices of Java for the Soul, but we've, thank God, learned many things together. And right now we are doing for those that are just joining us, we're doing Master Your Words. We're going through this book, Master Your Words. I still have some extra copies in my office. If anybody wants to purchase one of those at a discounted price, please be in touch with me. Okay, so we are up to day 71. And this is a very interesting discussion. So let's go through it. You've just started a course, right, in computer repair. The class is made up of groups of Jewish men and women, various towns in the area. None of you know one another. During a lunch break, a fellow student, a non-observant Jew, strikes up a conversation with you and begins digging instructor. Should you rebuke him, right? Now, it could be an observant Jew, non-observant Jew. It could be, I don't know. They're just trying to say this. Unfortunately, there's plenty of observant Jews that speak Lashon Hara, and plenty of non-observant Jews that speak Lashon Hara. So this is something that's across the board, right? So just want to point that out there. All right. So what is the difference between? And I want to know what you guys think. What's the difference between this case, right, and the cases we had before, right? Remember the case we had before last week was you're at a kiddush, right, and you're sitting on the table with a dozen friends. Right. So the question was over there, should you say something? And over here, again, the question is, should you rebuke him? Right. So, I mean, there's a couple obvious differences, but I want to hear from you guys. It's always good to hear what you guys think. As I've said many times, there's a passage in the Talmud we're actually learning it. It's Tractate Tainus. Right. The Daf Yomi is on page 25. But this is on page 7, Daf 7 in the Daf Yomi. There's a famous quote from one of the rabbis, Rav Yochanan, actually. Rav Yochanan said, and I learned a lot from my rabbis. I learned more from my study partner, and I learned the most from my students. Right. So the commentaries asked, what do you mean you learned the most from your students? Okay, it's great. You have good students, right? But let's be honest, right? Your rabbis are the ones. Your study partner, I could hear you guys are learning together. You're learning how to develop. You're learning together, right? But from your students. So the famous commentary Rashi, right, who lived in France in the 11th century, right? The famous commentary Rashi, right there on the spot, he says just a few words, mitoch kusyasam, from their questions, right? Means to say that when there's questions, or not necessarily questions, but statements, or even when a question is posed and they give different answers, right, we all think differently, right? We all have a different viewpoint. And when we are willing to hear other people's viewpoints, and especially the students, and we're all learning this together, but you always hear a different perspective. And I've seen this happen a million times in classes, and I'm sure some of you could attest to this. And many of times that someone says something, someone says a certain answer, and I say, yeah, that's a great answer. We're going to take that direction. I had a different thought, right? We're going to go with that direction, right? And then if I have time, I come back to the thought that I had. So I want to know what you guys think. There are, of course, a couple of obvious differences. What do you guys think? What's the difference between yesterday's case, right, and the case beforehand? But let's just work with yesterday's case and today's case. It wasn't actually yesterday's, it was last week. But what's the difference between the cases? Any thoughts?
You don't know each other.
Okay, very good, Chayla. Very good. One big difference is that over here you don't know each other, right? You're getting to know each other, but you don't know each other. Good. Anybody else?
I just say that they're talking about the instructor, a mutual person that they should be looking at, just meeting the person.
Okay, so you're saying that it's who they're talking about. It's a mutual person that they're working on. And over here, they're just talking about random people. Okay. Anybody else want to chime in? Okay, so there's another difference, which I sort of knocked this difference down, right? But there is another difference, and there is a reason why they made the case in this scenario, right? So I sort of knocked it down a little bit when they said a non-observant Jew, right? And I said, unfortunately, it's a disease, I like calling it, right? That a lot of people, that affects all walks of life, right? It doesn't make a difference how observant you are, how not, right? What country you come from, right? This gossip, speaking about other people is, there's a whole industry for it, right? That deals with this, right? People that not to talk about, some people that are in that, but there's a whole industry that looks into people's lives, and and spread it, and then say things and insinuate things, true or not true, right? But there is a difference regarding why they chose this case in particular, right? Because in the past, they didn't necessarily say observant or non-observant, right? The case beforehand, it's your friends. It's talking about your friends that are observant, right? So why did they specifically mention over here non-observant? So that is another difference, right? Even though in essence, regarding the people speaking Lashon Hara, right? There's unfortunately, as I said, it's across the board, right? But regarding the scenario, there is a difference. And what is that difference? And I want to tie in you're all correct. Major difference, right, is knowing the people or not knowing the people. Let's look at the halakha, and we'll expand on the halakha for a second. The halakha says like this: if you have no relationship with a person, it is clear that your rebuke will fall on deaf ears. You should not offer rebuke, right? We spoke about this, right? And we keep on talking about this, that rebuke, and this is something that's so important in our lives, right? In our secular world, in dealing with other things. We only have the obligation, and we're only not necessarily only the obligation, but we only should rebuke other people if we feel that it will make a difference in their lives, right? Now, remember, we spoke about that even if you don't go ahead and rebuke those people, you have to strengthen within yourself, right? Tell yourself that's wrong. Move away from the situation. If your kids or whatever are around, have a conversation with them and say, hey, listen, this is not something that we do, right? We don't talk, right? We're not judging those people, right? Every person has their struggles, their things, right? But, you have to strengthen it for your family, for your kids, right? But, right, for the person that's doing the thing, right? If what's it called again? If you know that it's not going to be, they're not going to respond to it, then you shouldn't go ahead and rebuke them. It's a waste. Not only is it a waste, right? But on the contrary, it could be detrimental, meaning to say that you could start creating animosity in between the two of you, right? Because they're not going to listen to you. Who are you to judge me? Who are you? Are you any better? Right? And these stupid comments that people make, but that's how people are, right? And you're what's it called again? And you're creating a situation where is an unhealthy situation regarding what's it called? Regarding the two of you. So if you know it's not going to be answered, then you should not say anything. Now, that applies to any Jew, observant or not. However, if a non-observant Jew is unaware of the prohibition and you feel he would be receptive, you should enlighten him or her about this beautiful aspect of the Torah's wisdom. So this is why it mentioned this situation. And just the reason why they say non-observant is because not anything against observant and non-observant. Let's just be honest, right? Observant Jews know a little more about the laws of the Torah, right? Now, there's plenty of observant Jews that don't know the intricate details of the laws, right? But they have more of the knowledge, right? And therefore, that's why they said the scenario in this scenario. They're trying to bring out another idea. That is that if the person doesn't know about it, right? So then, let's rephrase like this. If the person knows about the halakha, right, and they're going ahead and doing it, so even if it's subconscious, even if they can't control, even if they might know it's wrong and they don't really want to do it, but they just get caught up and and then they get all into it, right? It's one of those things that, they still don't want to hear someone else telling them, hey, you shouldn't speak Lashon Hara. And you can say it in the nicest way. You're not saying it derogatory. And say, hey, it's Lashon Hara. We shouldn't be doing it. You still don't, unless you're really in control of yourself, you have a healthy self-esteem, you don't want to hear that from a stranger, right? You don't want to hear that from a stranger, right? If it's a good friend, whatever, the ways you've talked about that, right? From a stranger, you don't want to hear it, even if you know the halacha, right? You got caught up, whatever, you struggle with this. I don't need you to tell me this, right? I know I struggle with this already, okay? Right? So you don't need that, right? So, but someone that doesn't know something, and if you educate them, again, if you bring it as education, not as judgment, right? But you're educating them, most of the time, they're receptive to it, right? Because you're just telling them a new piece of information, right? Something you didn't know, right? And we do this all the time. We do this with laws of kosher. We do it with the laws of Shabbat. We do it with the laws of davening, right? We do it with learning how to read the Aleph Beis, and wherever we're holding. And we do it with the laws of math, science, history, right? Economics, whatever everyone is doing with, right? Or being a mechanic, or being a plumber, or whatever it is, right? We all do this, right? I don't know something. I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to hear, right? I don't feel judged. I don't feel belittled. I don't feel like my manlyhood is going out the window because someone is telling me something because I didn't know about it. So, right, that's fine. So that's why they made the scenario in this way. And this is it's something that each one of us is going to each one of us is going to have to stop, right, and reflect on the situation. Is this a scenario when people are going to listen? And we've talked about this, I think, in the past, but it could be they're going to bring it in also, that even just because someone might not know something, and just because someone might be receptive, also you have to know where to say it. All right. So if it's like, you're after, during a break at the, we've all gone, I don't know if we all gone, but we've gone to, professional developments and things like that. Right. I've gone to South Florida. I've gone in up north. Right. And, there's like, people, there's a break time and people hanging out and smoozing, or it's lunch or whatever. And you're around the round table or whatever it is. And someone starts talking and said, oh, you might not know, but there's a law of lashon hara, of evil talk, and it's really not the proper conduct to do. So even though the person might be receptive to hear something new, but not in front of other people. Like, come on, use your common sense, right? Not in front of other people, not in front of other strangers, or even people that he knows, right, or she knows, right? This law is also telling you got to use your common sense of when and where also to say it. So that's what this idea is trying to teach us. Any questions or comments on this?
I got a question.
Go ahead, Martha.
It says, should you rebuke him? Okay, so how hard of a rebuke? I mean, is like, what's really, what you just said about it with a big group around and stuff, or just a kind of chide, maybe we shouldn't talk about this, bad information in, it's a computer class, maybe make a little light of it, and see where you go with it.
Okay, and anybody want to respond to Martha?
No.
No.
So then what's a rebuke? I mean, a
Okay,
definite
I will.
rebuke?
Okay, Jim is gonna. Martha, what?
Okay, I will.
Jim is on the rampage over here. Go, Jim.
I'll put on the video and hopefully I don't skip. Ooh,
It's okay, Jim.
I hope that didn't scare anybody. This is my morning look. Doesn't matter the day. I don't know what sort, how, so your question is how strong a rebuke? You can say it the same way, whether you're talking to a group of observant Jews or someone who doesn't know anything. I think if you're talking to non-Jews, I wouldn't say Jewish law, or you could, but you more or less just say, in Jewish law, and then if they're Jews, as you're not supposed to speak poorly of someone, and that's really not appropriate for us to be talking about that. And I think you could just say something as simple as that to whomever. It doesn't have to be a hellfire and brimstone rebuke. It could just be a kind of like I just said. That's my opinion. Bat and a quarter will get you nothing.
Okay, so I agree with Jim. Anybody else? Right, so rebuke has to, just to add a little bit, right? You have to know you have to know the situation. Every situation is different. It also depends who you're doing it to. For example, and if you're a teacher and you're rebuking a student, or you're a parent rebuking a child, right? Or it's a very good friend, right? And I think I talked about this before. Rebuke is a harsh word, right? Hokeach, right? We just trying to find an English word for it. Hokeach techiach, right? Hokeach techiach is make aware. Right, make your friend aware. It is rebuking them, right? But when we think of rebuke, we're thinking like, the pastor with fire, yeah, I'm going to hell. Right? That's not necessarily right what rebuke is referring to, right? It's just the English translation of hokeach techiach et hamisacha, right? You should make aware, right, your friend, of what's going on. And so you have to know every situation, right, is a different situation. And yes, if you're able to do it if you are able just to do it in a nonchalant way, like, so then go for it. If that's, not going to be effective, and that you have the ability, the friendship, the location, right, the time, right, what's going on, to be a little more forthcoming, so then do it. A little stronger, then do it. Right? If not, so then don't say anything, because if you're just going to say some kind of comment, right, that's a sort of half-baked potato, right, and it's not going to accomplish anything, and the person's going to later on think about what you said, and it's just going to create animosity, or the person's going to think about what you said, and then it's going to be like, what was he or she trying to tell me, and it's going to then create. So then don't say anything. Right? There's no cookie cutter way of doing it. There's rules. Means to say, you have to know your relationship, right? You have to know where you are. You have to know your authority. You have to know what's the knowledge of the person, right? So these are rules, giving you the guidelines. That's better than rules. Guidelines, right? Of when and how to do it. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide if this is a scenario or not. Right? Every person has to reflect and say, is this a scenario? And I've seen people screw up royally, and literally, right? I've seen people screw up royally at a kiddush, or at this or that, or at a family simcha, or whatever it is. And they said, how could he say that about someone? Or how could he do this? Right? If it's lashon hara, if it's something else, right? Right? And didn't you know? Oh my God, right? It's every situation has to be assessed. I'll just give you one interesting story, right? Where you really have to know, right? You really have to know how to approach someone. So, here in Yitzchayim, every place, but I'm just talking about Yitzchayim. Everybody's welcome to join us for Shabbat, right? Even you, Martha, you could come up for Shabbat. We haven't had you in a little while ever, but you're always welcome, Martha. And everybody's welcome in Yitzchayim for Shabbat, right? And we have a lot of people that come that don't know all the rules of Shabbat. And it was a rainy Shabbos, and someone that I was learning with for a little while, and I convinced him to come. Not convince him. We talked about it, and he decided. It was his opinion. I'm not convincing anybody to do anything. Right? It's their call. Right? He decided to come and check out Eitz Chaim for Shabbat, and he started coming for a couple of weeks now, and then there was a Shabbos that it was raining. Right? And so, typically, what do you do when it's raining? You take an umbrella from the car, right? He was driving, right, to the shul. Now, on Shabbat, one of the rules of Shabbat, and this is definitely one that's not known so well, is that you cannot open up an umbrella on Shabbat. Right? Opening up an umbrella on Shabbat is like creating a ohel, a roof. Right? It's a temporary roof, but it's like creating a roof, and that is something that you cannot do on Shabbat. So you're not allowed to open up an umbrella on Shabbat. It's a rabbinic prohibition, but you cannot open up an umbrella on Shabbat. Now, this person didn't know and wasn't expecting him to know, right? And we've had plenty of people that have come to shul with an umbrella. But there's a very nice gentleman, very nice, good meaning, excellent meaning, literally the best heart in the world, right? And he was walking up the driveway, right? At the same time, this individual was walking up the driveway, and he, very nicely and without any negative. This person has a heart of gold, and he only wants the best for everybody. And his intentions were, he didn't want this person to feel, funny walking into shul with an umbrella. So he thought he'll tell him. I said, I just wanted to let you know that, you opening up, we don't open umbrellas on Shabbat, so just Just wanted to let you know. That week, right? This other person is a very professional person, right? So whatever, he took it. That week, I get a phone call, and this person is very, very annoyed, right? Very hurt that someone called him out, a stranger, somebody doesn't know him. He met him once or twice, right? Now they're friends, but this happened a couple of years ago, and he was very hurt, very, very hurt. And I had to like calm him down, right? And tell him that there's no judgment. He wasn't trying to judge you, right? That's not what it was. He was just trying to, on the contrary, he didn't want you to feel funny walking into shul, right? That's what was his intentions, right? And it took a little while, but he heard it, right? He's a thinking person, right? But the first reaction, even strange, because even though he didn't know, but he's coming in, he's going to a stranger. You have to know the scenario. There's not the time. And I went and I had a conversation with that person. I said, listen, I know you meant well, and you really did mean well. But at the same time, you have to understand that there are people that are coming from a totally different mindset, and this whole thing of coming to Eitz Chaim is a foreign concept, and so taking on a whole new direction, and they feel funny, and it's hard for them to follow along and things like that. And we try to make it as comfortable, but at the same time, it is until you come a couple of times and get the flow, right? It is, right? So every small little thing, right, is expanded, right? So it's just an example. It's nothing to do with Lashon Hara, but it's this concept of rebuke, right? You have to be very careful, right? You have to know where it was. Let's say it was after, it wasn't during the scenario, and the person saw him, and they got to know a little bit. Said, hey, this one for future times, this one, the whole scenario would have been a different scenario, right? And over here, this person was truly meant only the best, right? Only the best. I know him very well, right? So it's just an example, right? Of you really have to be a judge, and in a scenario like this, when you're rebuking other people, harsh word rebuke, but just for clarification's sake, right? It's better to go on the stringent side of being cautious. Right, better to be more on the cautious side, right, than be on the fire and brimstone side, right? Because it is a scenario. There's a lot of scenarios that you might not even realize that you could really hurt the other person. Then the whole thing's gone. Your whole purpose of Hokeach Techiach is gone. And I said, for yourself, you have to strengthen yourself, right? There's 2 points to it. There's educating other people, and then it's for your strengthening yourself. You have to go ahead and strengthen yourself. You go learn the laws of Shabbat again, and things, whatever it is. I remember one time, I was talking to a friend of mine who was in a scenario for a little while where things were very, whatever it is, there was a certain halakhic Shabbat things that were happening that it was out of his control, right? And he wasn't doing it, but he was stuck in a place, and he felt like being in that situation for so long was starting to rub off on him. So he called up our Rosh Hashiva, my Rosh Hashiva in Israel, Rav Nassim Tzvi Finkel, a Blessed Mary. He passed away about 10 years ago, right? He was the Rosh Hashiva of the Mir Yeshiva, right? Who has about 7,000 students, right? He spoke to him and he said, like, what should I do, right? So he said, this is a scenario. You have no right to tell those people. You're a single guy.
Wait, sorry. What was the scenario with him? I missed.
So this person was in a scenario where he had to be in a place where the laws of Shabbat were not being kept properly, right? Or not being kept.
Okay, got it.
It was in a more, it was in a religious place, but it was not being kept up to par, right? A lot of things, and they were very loose about it, right? They didn't care about it. It wasn't like they did what they did. They felt they had to do, and they were just very loose about it, right? But so he had to be there for a little while for whatever reason, right? And he felt that it was starting to rub off on him, right? The sensitivity of Shabbat, right? The caring about Shabbat was starting to rub off on him. So he called Rav Nassim Tzvi Finkel and asked him, like, what should he do? And Rav Nassim Tzvi Finkel told him straight away, you're not the person, you're a single guy, right? You're there for whatever reason. I don't want to get into the details, right? And you're stuck there. You're not the rabbi. You're not they're on the contrary, and they're helping. They're giving you hospitality. They're helping you out, and you need it. You need to be there. Whatever. You can't get out. Said so that you're not the right now. It's not your place to start rebuking them, giving them tochacha. But what you do have to do is every day learn the laws of Shabbat. Open up a Mishnah Berurah, right? The code of Jewish law, right? And re-strengthen within yourself the laws of Shabbat. Learn it again, right? Go through it every day. Make sure you learn about 10, 15 minutes of the laws of Shabbat, besides everything else that you're doing. But go ahead and re-strengthen within yourself the laws of Shabbat, right? So that's another time. If you're not in the position to do something or to strengthen someone or to teach someone, or again, if it's Lashon Hara, if it's Shabbat, if it's kosher, or whatever it is, we still have that obligation to strengthen within ourselves and within our family, right? We still have that obligation. Someone else I know that was in a not as severe situation, but he felt that it was. So the Nassim Sweet Fiegel told him, said, take something on Shabbat that's a little more of a stringency, right? Take something on Shabbat that's a little more. So he decided, right, that he's always going to bring Shabbat in, right? Instead of like we do here, 18, right? Hadlakat Nirot, candlelighting is 18 minutes. And in Jerusalem, they actually do 40 minutes. And there's a Kabbalistic concept of doing a 40 minutes, right? The idea of 40 and the renewal and things like that. So he decided, right, the same way he did in Israel, 40 minutes, right? He's going to bring in Shabbat always 40 minutes. Now, in the wintertime, it's very hard, right? But that's what he decided. He's always going to bring Shabbat in 40 minutes earlier, that he's doing an action to strengthen Shabbat for himself, right? And it's the same thing with kosher, same thing with learning Torah, same thing with other mitzvot, whatever, Lashon Hara, right? Whatever it is, right? A lot of times we are in situations that you're not the ones to educate, right? Others, right? We're not in that position, right? We're in a situation where we won't be listened to. We're in a situation where it's just going to create a bigger headache or animosity, or it's just going to backfire, or whatever it is, right? We're not, but doesn't mean to say that we don't have to educate ourselves, rebuke ourselves, quote unquote. How do we rebuke ourselves? We rebuke ourselves by strengthening ourselves, right? By learning laws over again, like we're doing now, by learning the laws, right? By taking something on, right? By taking on a stringency, something that's a little more than above the law, a little bit. It's called lifnei mishur tadin, going above the law a little bit to show that you care about Shabbat or kosher or Lashon Hara, right? Or a prayer or whatever it is, right? To take something on, and by you strengthening yourself, right? It has ripple effects on your family, right? On your friends, on your colleagues. It has ripple effects. If you have, now don't get me wrong, if you are in a scenario where you do have the authority to say something, it's a close friend. They come and learn with you once a week and around your dining room table, right? It's a family member, right? It's a spouse, it's a child, it's a coworker that you have authority over, right? Whatever it is, if you do have the ability to say something, then of course you have to say something. Can't bow out. Say, I don't feel comfortable. I don't want to ruin the status quo, right? You have to say something. And yes, by saying something, you might ruin the status quo, right? It might, be the relationship for a little bit might be not on best terms. But you still have that authority, and therefore, if you don't say something, they're going to assume that either you hold that it's okay, right, or you don't care about it, or you don't show severity about it, right, and right, they might change because of you. Even if they don't change, but you still have that authority. You still have to say something. So again, one has to constantly reflect, and sometimes you have to ask someone else for advice, right, like this boy did. Right, but that's just one of the lessons that we can learn from this scenario. Any questions or comments? Anything we just said? Anybody? No? Okay. So let's look at the quote of the day. All right. Let's look at the quote of the day for a second, and then I just want to wrap up with a quick thought. All right. The quote of the day is like this. All right. Just as when there is no wood, the fire goes out. So when no one complains, strife is silenced. This is such a powerful Mishlei. Mishlei was written by King Solomon, right? This is such a powerful a quote, right? It's really, famous idea, it takes two to tango, right? Well, he started, right? It takes two to tango, right? If you haven't responded or done anything, right? Right? There wouldn't be a fight, right? The other kid would have been in trouble, but now you got involved, right? It takes two to tango. The same idea. There cannot be fire if there's no wood, right? You can't. It would go out, right? We made a couple of weeks ago. We had a musical Havdalah. Beautiful, right? Next one, please come on, join us, right? But we had a little bonfire outside, a little bonfire outside, right? And it was like right after Shabbat, and I was rushing. There was Marv going on, and we're doing right after Shabbat, and I was like trying to get it lit, and and of course, right? It takes time. We have these logs; it doesn't go. So we got, instead of using the logs, we use like these, they have like these, they're big, not like the small little ones, but like these big ones that make it easy light, right? So they go out pretty quick. So we put like 5 or 6 in there, right? Or 7 in there, right? And we just lit those, and then we had a nice fire. And then eventually the log started to catch on, right? But if there was no log in there, right? That eventually would have petered out. Very nice. It's a quick start, but it would have petered out. They're like these hot-headed people, right? They're all fire and brimstone. Right? They're the ones that get all intense and whatever it is, right? Those starters. But if there's no logs to continue the fire, it would have got out very quickly, right? So too, right? So too, if let's say it's just you and someone else, right? Right? Or even if there's 1 or 2 other people there, but the less people that are there at a conversation that is a negative conversation, the quicker that fire will go out, because there's less wood. And if there's no wood, there's no conversation. Most people, right, do not talk to themselves except if they're in the shower, right? 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 Okay, and I think in the shower usually they sing to themselves, right? But most people, right, do not talk to themselves, right? Even now, it's so nice. I mentioned this. Who was I talking to? Oh, I was talking to Dr. Rosenbaum, Elliot, right? We're talking about like Zoom and in person, and I said, it's so nice when I could actually see the people's faces. I know you're there, and I see their names, right? But I don't feel like I'm talking to myself, right? It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference when you see someone, and so much more when it's in person, right? But even in Zoom, and he said, yeah, of course, when the people's cameras are on, it's a whole different world, right? Than if the camera's on. And I understand why people don't have their cameras on. If I was listening to class on Zoom, I wouldn't have my camera on either, right? Because not necessarily, but I'm just saying, depends on what it was, right? Sometimes it's easier, whatever you're doing, and that's totally cool, right? I'm just saying, psychologically, right? Psychologically, right? It's when you see someone's face, right? Even if it's through a computer, right? You feel like you're talking to someone. You feel like you're doing something with someone, right? And that's the same thing with speaking. If someone is talking something, and you say, hey, sorry, I gotta go, right? Whatever, I gotta go use the bathroom. I gotta go get another drink or whatever it is. So then they're just sitting there by themselves, right? They're not gonna, just continue to say the lashon hara or the gossip or whatever it is that they were saying beforehand. There's no wood, right? You have to realize the listener is the wood. And that's what we're really getting to. And the listener is the wood, right? The listener is the wood. The person that's saying the lashon hara is the fire. If there's no wood, fire dies out. And I think that's it's not only for lashon hara, it's for machlokas. And which machlokas a lot of times falls. There will be lashon hara there. There's it's for shalom bayis, for peace in the home. Right? A lot of time arguments and things like that, they spiral out of control because everybody feels they have to have the last word. Everybody feels like they have to continue the conversation, right? And a lot of times, sometimes the best thing is, of course, communication is the best form of, marriage, right? But a lot of times you just have to suck it up and say, I hear you, dear, right? I'm sorry, dear, right? I hear. Even if you feel that you're not wrong, right? But sometimes, just to end it, because that is not going to continue. You know it's going to continue and it's going to go, but no, and you're going to try to explain it. Of course, at another time, it's good to have a conversation. Right? We had last year a beautiful program, Couples Night Out. It was great. It gave a healthy place for people to, to communicate. And there's many places for couples to communicate, but it's not necessarily always the best. Yes, I know I'm saying this, but it's not always the best to continue that conversation going, because sometimes it's just healthy to say, "I hear you, dear." Right? I hear. I'm sorry, or I hear. Let's try to figure this out together. Right? Let's try to make sure this doesn't happen again. Right? And because you're not putting wood in the fire anymore, and the more you put wood on the fire, right, the more it burns. And the more it burns, you turn around 5 weeks later, you have no idea why you had that fight. And now it's just turned to something totally different, right? That, you don't listen to me, you don't this, you don't hear me. It started off with like, I don't know, I left my socks out. I didn't put my socks in the laundry, right? That's what it could have started off with, right? Or something silly like that. But it just continues because no, I did. No, you didn't, right? So most times I do, right? And then so sometimes I do, but you leave your brush on the counter all the time, right? So like we all leave things down. That could be true, right? And it's like, okay, you leave your brush, and I leave my okay, but then but brush is different. It's on the. And I can start making a whole conversation, right? Which has nothing to do anymore with what happened, and it's not healthy. That's not communication. Right? Communication is when you're talking about an issue and you're talking about how to resolve the issue. You're talking about how to communicate about the issue, right? That is communication. Communication is not the blame game. You do this, I do that. You do this, I do that. Right? The blame game. Right? That's not communication. Right? So this idea of the wood, this statement, this quote from King Solomon, right, is of course lashon hara, right? You're the wood, but it's really for most things in a conversation, and most things, and physical things, right? If you're in a partnership with someone and you see that they're, a bad partner, they're cheating on their taxes and they're stealing, they're stealing from their customers, or they're false advertising and things like that, and the business can only work if he has a partner. So by you continuing to be the partner, and I'll just be quiet or whatever, you're the wood for the fire. You're gonna have to pull out, but it's gonna be hard. I put money. You have to pull out, and there's no wood anymore. The fire will die out. The other people are not going to get hurt. It's just, again, it's an idea that really expands on many things. Any questions or comments? Emily, I saw before you unmuted yourself. Did you want to say something?
Well, no, I was gonna say, sorry, I don't have my camera on today.
It's okay. It's okay.
Not happening for me today.
I understand why that wasn't what I was trying to say, but
it's just yeah. What I wanted to say was, I think that sometimes, like with the rebuking, you were saying people get into these fights, and then the fights, you don't even know how the fight started or whatever it is. I think a lot of times those fights come from rebuke, so it just, that whole thing of like how to actually rebuke someone in an effective, kind way that actually like gets through to them and they can hear it is like, it's really not so simple, and especially like, I don't know. I feel like we keep talking about this week and last week. We keep talking about sort of like telling other people what they shouldn't do. They shouldn't speak lashon hara or whatever. Just, you have to be so careful how you do these things. Like so careful. And I think sometimes it's probably better to not say anything than to, I don't know. I mean,
no,
I
100%, Emily, 100%. That's what really
so delicate. It's so delicate.
Right, 100, and I agree with you 100%, and that's why I expanded on that a lot today, right? Because we have been talking more about rebuke, right. And again, reiterating rebuke is a harsh word, right? But that's why I expanded on today. That you're 100% correct. Sometimes, and more, and one has, as I said, one has to be stringent on that side, right? To a lot of times not to rebuke. You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other comments or questions? All right, Suzette, you're quiet today. Usually you have like tons of questions.
You've given me a lot of food for thought, and
okay, good. Yeah,
I'm on
okay.
LinkedIn. I think I pulled a lot more from the local example that you gave than the actual example in the book. And that's probably because I can relate to it. And so I sat here thinking, well, what would my feelings have been if I was, the one receiving the rebuke? And I'm not sure, because on one hand, I want to make sure that what I do is in conformity. And if someone sees me doing something that's not within the laws, that they're okay to say, you're not doing this in a gentle manner. And then on the other hand, if it is a situation where I'm going somewhere and, I really feel very excited and I've made the effort, then I guess depending on the frame of mind I'm in the day, if that just comes at me, it might be, I made all this effort and I still didn't get it right. So it's a lot of food for thought, I'd say, and it does really make it a very tricky situation, because there are times when you want to do the right thing and is being quiet the right thing, or is just gently saying, giving a nudge. And the example you gave was just so poignant, because, the person's heart was in the right place, but yet still the message didn't come across as expected. So that's what I'll say. It was very, very personal.
Okay, good.
But a good one.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's
Okay.
a great point. Just we should all think about, and thank you for mentioning it. That when we hear these things, is there's always two parts to a story, but there's always two parts to reflect on. Number one is, what's a good situation to give the rebuke on, right? Quote unquote rebuke, right? But also, as Suzette just said, how would I feel in that scenario, right? And a good opportunity to also, next time one is in a scenario like that, realize that I don't want to say most, but a lot of people, and then it depends on where you are, let's say in a synagogue or things like that, most people, right, do not want to hurt you, right? They are being genuine. And then like you said, we all want to do better, right? We all want to grow, right? And sometimes the only way to do that is by hearing what other people have to say. So, not, as we said, what happened was, it was hard to know when to do it, but also you brought out a great point that a lot of times we also, from scenarios like this, it's an opportunity to reflect into ourselves. And I know myself, I don't like being told what to do, right? I'll be honest, right? I don't, but it's a great opportunity to reflect on and say, we're not perfect, right? We all have to grow, and we have to hear it from people, right? Yes. Depends who a lot of times, but even if it's not necessarily from the person that we thought we would hear it from, maybe they are not doing it the right way, right? But me as an individual, right, let me reflect on that and say if they're doing the right way or not, but the point is still a valid point, and I need to grow from it. So that's a great point, Suzette. Thanks for bringing that out. Chayalea.
Years ago, when I first joined SKI, as I was learning my way around, and it did something, and I won't say who, it had come up on me and said, I don't know if you want me to tell you, which was just a very gentle way. And then
Right.
I asked, yeah,
Great
and
point, right.
it was very, very comfortable. It was not at all uncomfortable.
Right. And again, a lot of ways is how you present it and where you are, right? Right. In this scenario, it happened to be they were walking up together. So it's like the person walk. There's a lot of, as I said, there's a lot of variables that can make the same thing more comfortable and the same thing uncomfortable, right? And that's something that we all have to think about. Great point, Khaila. Jim, I heard your voice before. You wanted to say something?
Just one thing. A high school friend posts sayings and things online. I'm sure a lot of you have the same thing. Not Jewish, by the way. Don't know if that makes a difference. But she posted something the other day that I thought was really apropos to this group. It says, if you can't figure out how to be kind, figure out how to be quiet. thought that was good.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote, right? Because as we're saying right now, even when rebuke has to come from being kind, right? And that's why I hate the word rebuke, right? It's really it's educating, and it's education, and it has to come from being kind, right? It's a great quote, Jim. Thanks for sharing that. It's really a great quote. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, comments? Okay, so I want to thank you all for joining us. This was a great discussion. I really appreciate it. Just a couple of housekeepings. God willing, next week we'll have class, and the following week we most probably will have class. But we will have to go week by week as we entering the winter break season. So just please remember that. Number two, please remember that every Shabbat we have special classes during the end of the laning of the Torah and through Musaf. I give twice a month. Rabbi Or gives once a month. Henny Fish gives once a month. So just stay tuned to the schedule. I know I'm not giving this week. I just have to look at the schedule of Rabbi or Henny. I don't remember, but please join us for that. It's a great opportunity to come and learn in a healthy environment, in a safe environment, right? You know, at the same time, we get in right before the rabbi's sermon and in Kolokenu, and that's what most people do know, right? So you know, if you wanna come and experience in an environment where you won't. I don't want to say uncomfortable because we never want anybody to feel uncomfortable, but in a more comfortable way, right? Come to the class and then join us for Enkelakenu, Aleinu, and Kiddush. Of course, we all want Kiddush, right? So that's number two. Number three, next Thursday, not this Thursday, right? Not tomorrow, but next Thursday is a lunch line. I know originally in the program book, the schedule was for tomorrow, but we are going out of town. Where my nephew's bar mitzvah is in St. Louis this Shabbos, so we'll be going to St. Louis. So the lunch learn is next Thursday in the JCA, sponsored by Barry Schiefer, not by Simon Schiefer, but by Barry Schiefer, right, in honor of Simon Schiefer's birthday, right, which is on 4, right? So happy birthday, Sima, in advance. And the Lunch to Learn is being sponsored in your honor. So please join us for that. We'll be talking about Yaakov, right? Jacob, our forefather. Hey there.
You're gonna have to come for that one.
Yeah, of course. There you go. You're gonna have to come to that one.
That
Right?
was a surprise, Rabbi.
Oh, that's the surprise is now. I'm mentioning it.
Surprise.
Sorry, whoopsie. Okay, Sima, put clogs in your ears.
Okay, she can hear a thing.
Surprise!
But
We all knew beforehand.
the topic is Jacob, the last of the forefathers, lessons for our days. Right? Be expanding on Jacob. It's the last parsha. It's the Thursday before the last parsha of Bereshis, and really sort of the conclusion talking about Jacob, our forefather. All right, so we are going to expand and learn more about Jacob. So please join us for the Lunch to Learn. And Sima, you didn't hear anything, but happy birthday. All right, sorry for ruining the surprise, Barry. But the flyer is going to be out on Shabbos anyway. So, we are very excited for this Lunch to Learn. But the main point is, if for whatever reason you happen to look at the program book, which I don't know how many people actually do, right? But you thought Lunch to Learn was tomorrow, it's not. Right, that's next Thursday. There's a schedule change. So thank you all, and God willing, I will see you all next week. But we won't be here for Shabbos. So, what Allah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Let me end the recording.